start by having you tell our audience what happened here today and what will happen next.
Sure. This again was a very limited hearing. The purpose of it was just to determine whether or not Panett or Tatum would invoke his constitutional right to remain silent if asked certain questions. According to their attorneys, they're not going to do so. So we're going to proceed at the evidentiary hearing, which is scheduled for August.
What's your position with regards to Mr. Sisti's assertion that that they offered perjured testimony and that this verdict should be set aside?
Well, I responded in a written motion extensively setting forth the state's position, and I'm going to wait until the hearing, until the actual evidence comes out and the judge can see and hear for himself what the actual evidence is rather than a representation by a lawyer.
Now, what will happen over the course of those 1.5 days? Will anybody besides Tatum and Panett testify, or is it really just the two of them? How does this work?
Well, there are additional witnesses that could be called. First, this is a little unique in that it's a defense hearing. It's not a state hearing, so it's up to Mr. Woliski's attorneys as to who they want to call for witnesses first. But they have stated their intentions to call Mr. Panett and Mr. Tatum to testify, which I believe they would be doing that. But in terms of additional witnesses, there could be additional witnesses who testify. But again, the initial burden is on the defense to call witnesses and to present evidence, actual evidence, to the judge.
Now, can the state? Oh, I'm sorry, Andy. Can the state call witnesses too in this hearing in August?
Yeah, just like any hearing, both sides can call witnesses, but unlike most hearings of which you've all been involved, it's typically the state who calls witnesses first, and then the defense gets a chance after the state rests its case or finishes its portion of a suppression hearing, for example. The defense can call witnesses as well. So here it's up to Mr. Woliski's attorneys to call witnesses, and after they're done their presentation of the case, we can then call witnesses if we choose to do so.
Do you think that the trial jury got the verdict correct?
Absolutely.
And if so, can you explain why?
Well, absolutely. The trial jurors heard all the evidence in the case. Again, not representations of lawyers, but actual evidence under oath, and not just from Mr. Panett and from Mr. Tatum. That trial lasted a good 2.5 to 3 weeks for good reason. We called not only those two witnesses, but I think 3 dozen other witnesses, as well as phone records which corroborated what they and other witnesses said, physical evidence. And also remember, Mr. Woliski testified. He lied under oath, and the jurors who actually heard all the evidence in the case, heard from all the witnesses, correctly found that he was the one who was being untruthful and lied.